experience of life that I just ran a workshop in Los Angeles with a bunch of actors, and I had cause to sort of say what my basic philosophy it is. It's like my philosophy is, which I developed in the Bronx in a certain kind of neighborhood, was enjoy whatever's going on. And a lot of times really lousy stuff's going on, but find a way to enjoy it because that's all you got. That's your life. And then also dream whatever you want to dream, and then you might be able to realize it.
Well, so I guess I've been a lifelong Joe Versus The Volcano fan, so I have 1,000 questions. I'm going to try and localize it to some that are hopefully coherent, and then I'm going to let you guys ask questions. But I guess, where does the idea for this come from? Like, you went from Moonstruck to Joe Versus The Volcano, and like, what made you want to make Joe Versus The Volcano, and how did you get so much stuff inside of it?
Well, as I said before the film started, I was in that horrible job at American Cystoscope Makers Incorporated with the terrifying medical instruments and the drawers full of artificial testicles, and many other really rough jobs. And also I was really poor for a very long time. I didn't have any success at all until I was like 35, and I lived in abject poverty for about 15 years. And I didn't mind it, and I found things to enjoy in that. But then I wrote my first film, and a guy invited me out to Los Angeles. I wrote it, and he was interested in doing it, and so he invited me out to Los Angeles. On the first day I was in Los Angeles, he took me on his yacht to Catalina to get fresh abalone with his chef. And I had been avoiding direct sunlight at that point for over 10 years. And I suddenly found myself on the Pacific Ocean on a yacht crashing through waves. And I was just like, how the hell did I get here? And I got there through my imagination.
Okay. That's an amazing story. But I mean, I guess I have no response to that. But also, I mean, like, I love this movie. I think that you're a genius. But also, this movie has just like the creme de la creme of everybody across the board. You have the greatest character actors to ever grace the silver screen. You've got like Colleen Atwood, Bo Welch, like Marion Doherty, just like some of the most amazing people to ever work in film. Like, were you aware that you were assembling an all-star team whenever that was all coming together?
Well, I was under the tutelage of Steven Spielberg. And Steven, we talked all the time. I had my office a few doors down from him, and we talked just about every day. And anytime he mentioned a movie and I hadn't seen it, he would send it over to my hotel, and then we would talk about it the next day. So I had that guy, and then I had my own taste in childhood. Robert Stack is out of my childhood. Lloyd Bridges is out of my childhood. And I said, you mean I could just pick up the phone and they'll come over here? So I was like, oh, sure, I want all of them. Abe Vigoda, and there's a small part, and they said, how about Amanda Plummer? I said, Amanda Plummer's not going to want to do this part, it's too small. And Amanda Plummer came and said, I'd love to do this part. It's okay, do the part.
Yeah, Carol Kane just gets a look, I think.
And Carol Carol Kane, who is uncredited and does a cameo, did it in exchange for the wig she's wearing.
Well, so you have this all-star team of performers and set designers and everybody. How much of like just the layering was, because there's so much stuff in the frame that Edgar Wright would blush watching this movie if like he realized how much was in it, because like the side of the restaurant is like showing you the volcano, like the lightning bolts everywhere, like down to like the chip in his wall, like it's amazing how conscious you always were. Like, were you always putting that in there, or
Yeah.
was it part of the team going?
I spent 5 months in production design. Every day I was in that room with Bo Welch, and we designed the whole movie. And there's subliminal things in the movie that I would never expect you to know about or notice, but I did them. Like in the scene where they come out of the restaurant, the guy sings in Spanish, "When I'm on the street where you live," and then they come outside and there's a sailor leaning against a lamppost, and there's a mural of a volcano exploding and a guy saving a girl. But on the ground are broken pieces of mirror all over the whole set that I had sprinkled to create a sparkle that you wouldn't particularly notice, but that was there. When they take the Staten Island ferry, I put up translights of the skyline of New York, and then had them cut gels out in different colors and make each building a different color. And you don't even notice it, I don't think anyway. And when they drive up to his little apartment, we built the whole block and gelled every window a different color on the entire block. It's all artificial.
Well, what's one of the things that you aggressively tried to put in there that you don't think anybody's ever noticed?
Well, I think some of the things I just said were fairly esoteric. When they're on the yacht and there's the typhoon, and they have this sort of crazy moment where it's all like mayhem, and it all stops for a minute for them to have a romantic moment. And they stand up into the frame, and the pulleys behind them are carved into the shapes of hearts. If you ever get around to watching the movie again, you will see them there. Yeah. It's a lot.
I've seen this movie literally 100 times, and I've never seen that.
Yeah.
So is there any bits that you still like in watching the movie? Like, are there any favorite moments that you have, like as memories from making the film?
Well, I mean, I really enjoyed shooting the stuff on the trunks. And I'm not sure enjoy is the right word for the storm sequence. It was my first film, and I had to shoot a typhoon. We built the yacht. In addition to having a real yacht, we built the yacht on a gimbal, which is the thing that makes it rock like that, on a tank, the tank where Esther Williams shot all her movies. And then we had 20-foot high dump tanks all around, and airplane propellers, and rain machines, and lightning machines. And we were on that for a month. We shot on that for a month. So it was a gigantic project. And Warner Brothers, as I explained the entire movie, how I was going to do it to them, and they were delighted. And as soon as they started seeing the dailies, they went insane. They did everything in their power to stop me. And we were at war. And all I would say is, listen, I understand if you don't, want to do what I want to do. I did explain what I was going to do, and you seemed on board with it. But I'll get a cab, and I'll go home. And they would stop. And this went on, and they finally said they weren't going to give me the money for the volcano. I said, well, what are you going to call the movie? I said, what are you... And so I ended up getting everything my way, and then nobody would hire me for like 15 years.
But were you completely happy with it then? Whenever the movie came out, like you saw the finished product?
I was happy with the movie. I ran into, there's something very peculiar about this movie. There is no villain in this movie. There is no ticking clock in this movie. There's uncut masters in this movie that are over 2 minutes long. And this, if you are like a studio executive, or if you are a filmmaker facing a regular commercial audience, this is terrifying, because you're like, how can this hold? It can't hold, because what you're doing is you're handing it over to the audience and saying, relax, relax. And the whole basis of most of commercial movie making is never let them relax, never give them time to think. And this movie does nothing to give you time to think and to feel. And the richness is in the frame. I told Stephen Goldblatt, the cinematographer, I want you to treat the camera like it's 5,000 pounds. It's a big decision to move the camera. And then I want to explore what's in the frame. I want that to be a rich thing. And I want actors who I want to watch, and I want to give them time to be them. So it's made from a place of a certain confidence. It's just like, this is what we're gonna do, and we'll bear the consequences with it. And the consequences were rough. I mean, the movie, made a profit, but I was like excoriated by the New York Times, but they hated Moonstruck too. It was rough. And so it's kind of nice for me. All these years later, I look at the film and I'm like, oh yeah, I stand by every bit of this.
I will say thank you from the bottom of my heart for making this movie, because it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and I feel so much every single time I watch it and I discover new things. I'm really sorry you had to live 15 terrible years of life in order for me to enjoy it.
I won the Pulitzer Prize during that time. I had some good dinner parties. It was all right.
Well, yeah. Do you feel that kind of wave of reappropriation of this film? Because from the moment I saw it, I loved it, but critics were kind of divided, I think is a fair way to put it, whenever it came out. And it made money, but do you feel like that wave of people now going like, I love Joe Versus The Volcano, and you're like, wait, nobody's being a dick and just saying that?
Yeah, no, it's a nice thing, and Tom Hanks came back to me and wanted to, everybody wanted to work with me after that. I didn't want to work with any of them. I was so sick of the movie business and Los Angeles. I was like, I just have to get out of here and have a nervous breakdown. And I went home, and it took me, I would say, 5 years to get over making the film. It was just, 'cause it was really an enormous effort. And at the end of it, I felt like I got kicked in the head by an ornery horse. But I'm very grateful that things turned out that way. Because if the movie had been an out and out success, I would be a total asshole now.
Like Steve Martin, he made The Jerk, and the first thing that he wanted to do afterwards was remake Pennies from Heaven. And then it came out, and critics didn't like it, and it didn't make a buck. And he goes, I do think that audience who get it are intelligent and wonderful, and I think the people who don't get it are ignorant scum. And then he went and made, a big, obvious comedy again in order to please people, because that's what they were expecting from him.
Right.
But yeah, no, I could literally have this conversation with him all night long, but I want you guys to get your questions in, because if I was in a room with John Patrick Shanley, I would want to ask my questions. So if you have one, hold your hand up, I'll point at you, you'll say it extremely loud, and we'll just all be polite, civilized human beings. Yeah, you go.
I'm so glad to be able to see you and see this movie again on the big screen for the first time for me, on the big screen. And of the movies of yours that I've seen that you've written, I've loved. But the thing that sticks out for me, particularly with Moonstruck and with this one, is dialogue. Could you talk a little bit about writing dialogue and how that comes to you? Because I feel like the dialogue to come from an authentic place and sound authentic is really hard to write.
Well, I mean, I work really hard, but I have a very good ear. So I both can hear the way that people talk, and then I can select out from that. I don't, when people say, oh, you're so creative, or I don't feel that what we do is creative. I think it's expressive. So we take what's there, and then we take from that and we express something. The materials exist. They existed before I was born, and they'll exist after I die. I think it's very helpful to read beautiful literature that contains great language. I've been very influenced by the King James version of the Bible, because I found the language so beautiful. And I have heard people speak in that exact way on the A train in New York. Not all the time, but you'll hear a phrase and you go, that could be in the Old Testament, what that person just said. I remember being on the A train one time and hearing two women talk, and I knew every single thing these two people said could be in Moonstruck. The intonation, the words that they would choose is very strange. Moonstruck, if you listen to it again, listen to it, it's totally stylized. They speak in this really weird, stilted way through the whole movie, but they all do it, so it seems like, oh, that's the way those people speak.
Well, I mean, it's like Moonstruck and this movie, I always think are cut very much from the same cloth in the sense that they're both fantastical stories. Like they both have this kind of supernatural moon that exists, and both kind of evaluate like the morality of a person or like the weight of a person's soul. Like, is that something that you're constantly exploring, or is it just something that you were?
Look, I feel like we're here for 10 minutes, and I'm trying. And the thing that my big consolation for myself and everybody, I've had friends who came to me in consternation about, let's say I had a broken heart, and I found myself saying, I would always say this, and I would say it because it was very genuine for me. I'd say, it's okay, you're gonna die. It's just, it's a few minutes. It's just, we're doing it's a few minutes,
Well, that's funny coming from you. You should merchandise that shirt. Because I think people could walk around. It could be the have a nice day of our current generation. But also, like, I follow you on Twitter, and you seem like the most upbeat and positive person every single day that you wake up.
Well, I mean, in other words, it's a choice. It's, I guess you could call it positive paranoia. The normal paranoia that we look at is like, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something bad going on. And maybe I can't put my finger on it, but I think there's something good going on. And that's, as much as anything, a choice. You can take the information that's coming to you and you can use it in whatever way you want. So why not think about it in a way that's going to make your life more interesting and more enjoyable and more rich and expansive rather than narrow? It's the difference between Freud and Jung. When somebody was talking to me about Freud one time, and I said, well, the reason I go with Jung rather than Freud is because if you have a dream and you tell somebody who's a Freudian your dream, when they analyze it, there'll be less there than there was before. And when a Jungian analyzes it, there'll be more there than there was. Well, I'm a Jungian, that's it. It doesn't matter to me. You talk about some outside truth, I don't care about the outside truth. I'm gonna take the version where I get more pleasure, more stimulation, rather than less. Whenever people say, oh, you have to be realistic, or, oh, it's just this, that's just life. I mean, like, yeah, it's not just anything. Life is a tidal wave that is going to destroy us all, and you might as really fucking well enjoy this tidal wave.
And so, particularly with a movie like Joe, I think that there is so much to analyze. Do you like it when somebody comes to you with what they analyze from it or what they get from it versus them interpreting what your intent was?
Yeah, I mean, I don't worry about it too much. People sometimes, come and have a theory that they want to check out with me, or or it's doubt and they want to know if the priest is guilty or not, or and it's theirs. It's theirs. Once you make something, a play, a film, or whatever, you're giving it to the other person. So why take it back and scrunch it into like, yeah, no, that's wrong. I meant this. No. They had a response and you had an intention, and between the two there's more, and why not let it continue to be more?
Yeah, somebody else have a question? Right up here, you were the first.
So I just wanted to say, in high school I was introduced to Beggars in the House of Plenty, and then eventually I found Savage in Limbo, and I just wanted to thank you for those plays because they got me into theater and I completely loved them. They were fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
And so I just wanted to know, going from writing plays to writing movies, what was the big difference that you found between the two?
Well, yeah, when I wrote, I've been a playwright since I was 22. I've been a writer since I was about 11. And at a certain point, I, realized that I got a grant, and it was enough money for me to live on for a year. And I painted people's apartments for a living in that particular era. And I thought, well, unless I do something to change my situation at the end of this year, I'm going to be back painting people's apartments. So I better write a movie. And so I watched a bunch of movies. And I would watch the movie and I would think, how would you write that? And that starts the transition right there. And then I thought about, what should I write about? I thought, well, the first movie I'll write, it's going to be about my childhood. I come from a colorful place. And so I started with things that I remember from my childhood that would be interesting to photograph. And so I had, for instance, guys in my neighborhood broke into the Bronx Zoo, stole the penguins, and put them in a fountain, and threw a beer party. And then when they got drunk at the end of the night, they beat one of the penguins to death. Right. And between those two things, the delight you felt at the first part of the story, and the horror that you felt at the second part of the story, that's my neighborhood. So I was like, well, I'll be putting that in, you know. And there were a lot of women in my neighborhood went out the window. A lot of women in my neighborhood fell or jumped out windows, including one that I saw. I was across the street from my house. It was in a tenement, and one afternoon, as I was sitting on the porch, a woman came out the window, the side of the building, right across the street from me. And she, out after her, leapt the most beautiful collie you've ever seen. And they both fell to their death 5 stories. And they came and they took the woman's body away, and they left the collie there for a few hours. And then they took the collie away, and then it didn't rain for a while, maybe a week or 2, and there was a stain there. And then I remember thinking, I don't know if that stain is the woman or the dog. And then the rains came, and then the stain was gone, and I could just feel that place. And that's part of my childhood, you know, and people's reaction to that story, where they really ended up feeling more for the dog than the woman, because it's a beautiful collie, right? It's a reinforcing of something. But there were at least 3 women who fell or jumped out windows in mine, because what they would do is my girlfriend's grandmother went out the window too. They would go out, the Irish women, so they see a dirty window, it's got to be cleaned even if you might die. So they would sit outside the window and clean it, and the old tenements, the window frames were rotten, and the whole window would come out, and away they go. Well, we're all gonna die.
At least they were doing what they loved.
They died cleaning.
All right, somebody could maybe lead him into a less dark corner. If you have a question about sunshine and rainbows, I guess now's the time. Yeah, way up there.
Hi, so first I want to just thank you for making this movie. It's really changed my life. I think it was about exactly 1 year since I saw Joe Versus The Volcano, and then I quit my job and moved to Austin. And things have been great, so thank you for that. I feel like you're responsible for the goodness in my life. So it's a 2-part question. First, what is your reaction when people like me come up to you and say that this movie has changed your life? Can I have your autograph after?
That's the whole question? Yes, you can have the autograph. And, you know, we all change each other's lives. People are changing my life all the time. I was doing a bunch of little plays in Los Angeles this past week with a bunch of actors, and I was working on the concept of gender exhaustion. That the men are tired of being men, the women are tired of being women. Can we just talk about it? Is there some way we can renegotiate the whole thing? It's like a play that's been running too long, you know? It's like I'm so tired of playing this part. So I did this play, and I wrote a little play about an experience that I had. And so I did it first with the traditional casting, and then I did it a second time, and I had a woman play the man, and a man played the woman, and a woman played me. And I was watching it, and I started to feel compassion for myself, which I don't usually feel. And it changed my life. She changed my life. You know, no one else. It was like, you know, 30, 40 people in the room at the time, and most of them certainly didn't know what I was experiencing. I don't know what you were experiencing exactly when you saw Joe and it made you quit your job and move to Austin. But, you know, I would say that you probably chose this, like, I wanna live. Life is a finite and beautiful thing, and I want to live. And anything that sort of, you know, we keep falling asleep, and anything that just jerks you back awake is a wonderful thing that we all share. So I mean, I've done it sometimes with a play or a movie, and you know, people have done it to me with a random act of kindness on the street. Sometimes just sometimes a compassionate look is enough.
Yeah, there was somebody just behind that person that just asked the question that I wanted to also get to.
Also, this is one of my favorite movies of all time. You guys you briefly touched about fan theories, and I just wanted to ask you about what I thought was a really good one that was going around a little bit ago, a couple of years, about that this whole thing is Joe's afterlife, and just if there's any truth to that, or what your thoughts are.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the whole.
He was asking if this fan theory where the entire film was a figment of Joe's afterlife.
Oh yeah.
If there's
No.
any truth to this. You put him in a corner where you get a yes, no. You didn't ask for elaboration. You didn't let him talk about dead animals. All right, we're gonna do one last question. So if you haven't asked a question, I want to find you. Yeah, here. You seem like a nice person. Ask a good question though. So, but like seriously, good one.
Okay, so, was there a philosophical reason behind choosing to have the same actress play all three of the major female roles in the movie? Thank you.
Well, you know, I think, first of all, I think a lot of the time we treat different people as if they were the same person. We have a sort of reflexive way of relating to people, and people who seem, let's say, sort of like a mother, you treat like a mother, and a father, you treat like a father, and a person you're attracted to, you may find yourself treating different people who you're attracted to like they were the same person, and I think that's because you're seeking something. You have an image in your head of what you're looking for, and you have a feeling of familiarity with somebody. I'm sure you've had this from time to time, where you go like, I do feel like I've seen you before, and there is something familiar about them, and it may be that you've known somebody like them before, but it may be that you have somebody imagined in your heart that this person resembles. It's like that thing about, you know, we all have like two mothers. We have the mother that we had, and then we had the mother we wish we had. And we have an image for that. And when you meet the mother you wish you had, you kind of recognize her and go like, oh, I wish you were my mother. But we're all gonna die. So.
Well, I would like to sincerely thank you for coming out, reminding me that life is finite, and also thank you guys. These screenings are not successful unless an audience shows up, and I could not think of a better movie to watch on a Monday about a shitty day of having to go back to work, only to find out that your life has meaning. So thank you guys for being here tonight.